Nikki Haley takes aim at the transgender community. What a surprise. And Emma Vigeland from The Majority Report gives her opinion and takes it to the transphobes. Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America. What is going on, you beautiful people? This is Middle America, where we are not left-wing, we are not right-wing, we're just right. My name is Vincent. This is Middle America. If you want to be part of the conversation, you can do so. Facebook.com/America Middle. Keep in mind, dear listener, that we are a free speech environment, and we do take that literally. So if I'll say this, it's not for everybody. Let me say it that way. Let me put it that way. It's not for everybody. Okay, now this is a really weird time. It's 3:45 in the morning. One of my homies in the community sent me this very interesting, let's say, document video. Let's say it that way. Somebody sent me a really interesting video, so I am going to check it out. It's with Emma Vigeland from, I was gonna say the Young Turks. I mean, she's been on the Young Turks. Emma Vigeland recently was part of the whole controversy jihad with Anna Kasparian, where Anna didn't want to be called a birthing person or a menstruator, and the majority were, I guess, the orthodox perspective on what Anna Kasparian did, according to Sam Sater and Homegirl, was that it was an anti-trans act to say that she didn't want to be referred to as a birthing person. He called it an anti-trans act because he doesn't want to call Anna Kasparian a transphobe, yada yada yada. So this is where we are. This is where we are in America. All right, here we go. So it's Nikki Haley stunts crowd. I don't really know what Nikki Haley is trying to do. It's what's up, Ranter Matt? It's an odd idea to me that this woman is running for president of the United States. There is no way in the world. I mean, you look at her numbers and things of that nature. I don't understand. I mean, you know, running a campaign is really, I got to see it over the summer, last summer, with Dorian, because he was working for the local GOP here, and he was stumping for them and all that. I mean, doing a campaign is insanely difficult, and so I have no idea. What's up, Josh Morris? I have no idea why Nikki Haley is even putting out the effort to run for president when she knows good and well that there's no way in the world that she's going to win. But be that as it may, here's Nikki Haley apparently having a conversation with some people. I don't know who they are. Let's check it out.
Nikki Haley totally bombing on her presidential tour here. This is her at an event in New Hampshire, right? She's making the rounds. And
oh my God,
this is the Politics and Eggs Forum at St. Anselm College in New Hampshire, where the CNN Trump town hall was at.
And New Hampshire tends to be more moderate in that, like, they have open primaries where you just have to register on the day and you can't vote in the other primary. So when I was covering, you know, like, I remember going to a Biden town hall in New Hampshire, you get some Republicans coming in, and it's just more of a mix
logical boys playing
of independents as well. So talking about right-wing culture war garbage like Nikki Haley's about to try to invoke here, it doesn't play as well as, say, when, you know, you're engaging
I don't think it's a culture. I don't think it's a culture war issue as much as it is a worldview war, and we're definitely in the midst of worldview war, as we covered in the previous video. We continue.
with a very limited right-wing ecosystem online. She gets zero applause here when she tries to reference something that normal people are like, What are you talking about?
We've got biological boys playing in girls' sports. It is the women's issue of our time. Where is
St. Anselm College? So that's yeah, I think she would be in the on home court at St. Anselm College over there for sure.
everyone? My daughter ran track in high school. I wouldn't even know how to have that conversation with her.
Oh.
Okay, so we're going after the trans stuff, and we're talking about biological males competing against women. Now, prior to the onset of puberty, a lot of folks who are part of this debate apparently are not very conversant with sports and how they work, nor are they conversant with how sports have been done in America since the beginning. Prior to puberty, you have intramural, you have co-ed teams, boys and girls team. When I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, whatever, my first baseball team, we had a girl on there. Shout out to Jennifer. My taekwondo team, we would go to the regional tournaments and all that. We had a girl on our team. Prior to puberty, girls and boys are pretty even, and the sports are also pretty even. Let me know if my vocals are improved. Thank you guys for the feedback. Keep going. Okay. But long story short, when I was a kid, until we hit puberty and stuff, we had girls on the, on our taekwondo team. We had girls on the baseball team. No problem. Then we hit puberty, and then they started to bifurcate the league for obvious reasons. We continue.
You're engaging with a very limited right-wing ecosystem online. She gets zero applause here when she tries to reference something that normal people are like, what are you talking about?
We've got biological boys playing in girls' sports. It is the women's issue of our time. Where is everyone?
I mean, I don't know if I would say that it's the women's issue of our time. I mean, I don't know. I think the Dobbs decision is probably the decision that has the most implications. I'm not one of these people that's going to say that this has no implications, because it has a lot of implications. Like, for example, what do we do with incarcerated individuals? Are we going to put biological women locked behind, because that's what prison is. We're going to put biological women locked behind closed doors with biological men. That has severe ramifications. When you talk about combat sports, where you have a male to female trans individual breaking the eye sockets of 2 women over 11 fights or something like that, that's, I would definitely say, abused women's shelters. That's another one, definitely. But I think the Dobbs decision is probably a bigger decision relative to that goes. I understand contact sports, but track is worse. You'd have more of a shot in a contact sport than in track. That track and field is actually where the distinctions between genders post puberty become explicitly clear and obvious. For perspective, my aunt was on the second team. Okay, so for the Olympics for Jamaican track. Okay, so she had a personal trainer, almost had to deal with Nike, and then a situation happened relative to certain things, and she was injured and not able to go. Like, I'm not authorized to, whatever. But I used to race my aunt, okay? As a kid, I used to race my aunt, and she's like an Olympian level Jamaican runner, which, I mean, Jamaican women dominate. I mean, it's really just between us and the Americans back and forth every Olympics. And, yeah, I was athletic, but I was way closer to her in that race than I should have been. We continue.
My daughter ran track in high school. I wouldn't even know how to have that conversation with her.
Oh,
How do we get our girls comfortable with biological boys in their locker room?
Yeah, it's a weird thing. Like, rhetorically speaking, people say I wouldn't know how to talk to my kids. I mean, look, if your daughter's 17 years old or whatever in high school, like, she's got her own opinion on it. Like, you do know how to have that conversation. Like, especially now. This is not like 5 years ago. I mean, it's everywhere. It's impossible for you not to have that conversation with your daughter. I mean, I think that I had a conversation with somebody in our little community here, facebook.com/America Middle. And we were talking about the locker room issue, and I was like, so it's cool? Like, you can have underage girls being exposed to male genitalia in full erection? And she didn't believe that happened. She said, nobody's doing that. That never happens. And so I quickly gave her multiple issues in America and abroad where that absolutely did happen. Where dude is in the women's dressing room masturbating, is completely erect, whatever. And while this woman is getting into the changing area. So I think a lot of this has to do with people's ignorance as to what is actually happening. A lot of people don't believe that this is happening. A lot of people don't believe that we're putting convicted sexual assaulters who are male, like biologically male, in a prison with women. Like, people don't understand that that's happening. So I see what she's saying, but putting it into the context of, like, how am I going to explain this to my kids is a little bit overdramatic in my opinion.
It's not okay. Everybody know about Dylan Mulvaney?
Now, here we go. Let's just bring up Dylan Mulvaney. Like, the whole Dylan Mulvaney situation is, everybody uses the word disgusted on the internet or whatever. So I'm not gonna hyperbolize it. But I gotta tell you, it's like, clearly the conservatives won this cultural episode relative to Target, relative to the Dodgers. I mean, there's been a couple situations. There was Target, there was a Dodgers situation, and then there was the other thing that happened. I think it was three major companies that Bud Light, obviously, that completely folded under the pressure. And I think left wingers and progressives are completely misinterpreting this as these are progressives that are part of this boycott. I'm sorry, these are hyper conservatives that are doing this to people. No, it's not, and I'll explain why if this video continues to come out. But the lack of understanding that progressives, especially pro-trans progressives, have is just absolutely mind-boggling to me. And I talked about this before, where the woman was talking about why conservatives are so crazy about public school. I mean, school choice or whatever. And I was making the point that these people, anybody that contradicts them, they call them conservatives. Which what ends up happening is it makes it so that you can't see the actual reality as to what's actually happening, because you just say anybody that disagrees with me must be a conservative, and so you're not looking at the situation from the most objective view possible. Dear listener, conservatives tried and failed on a multitude of occasions to boycott people out of existence. Don't you remember how Starbucks was supposedly anti-Christian for saying happy holidays, and they had the red cups, and the evangelicals and the right-wingers tried to cancel Starbucks, and it turned out to be a giant, laughing stock. But these people had invested time, they invested shows, they invested all types of shit to get us to boycott Starbucks, and it became a laughing stock, right? This situation, the Bud Light situation, the Target situation, and others, like, this situation result in billions of dollars of lost revenue and stock. And so instead of saying, well, holy shit, this is different than the Starbucks, what's happening culturally so that these things are starting to stick, so that these Fortune 200 companies are starting to fold and apologize and shoot new commercials. Like, think this through, progressives. This is not only, I've been trying to tell you guys, this is not only conservatives who have a problem here. Conservatives aren't the only ones that have a problem with dudes in women's bathrooms. Conservatives aren't the only ones. The issue is conservatives are the only ones that are going to go on TV or on the internet and say it because they're not worried about getting canceled. But trust me, your left-wing friend who's like, yeah, all about it, but they have kids, believe me, they're part of this shit. They are. Now, her bringing up Dylan Mulvaney to me is right. That's the question that needs to ask. What makes a difference between Starbucks and Bud Light and Target? Those are the questions that these people are not asking, and that's why they're going to lose. Okay? That's why they're going to lose. Now, I gotta tell you, I am not a fan of the whole Dylan Mulvaney situation. I'm not a fan of setting up a bunch of beer cans and then shooting them. I think that that's a terrible message. I also think the success of the last couple social movements on the anti-trans side are the major thing I worry about is what are you hearing as a trans kid? Here's what you're hearing as a trans kid. The main gatekeepers of your community are saying that the whole world is against you and that they want to genocide you. That's what the people who are supporting trans kids are saying. They're throwing around words like genocide and all the rest of it. And I've already explained they're the last people on earth that are being genocided in America. That's a different discussion. So what you hear is you're being genocide. Everybody hates you. Anybody that disagrees with you hates you. And then on the other side, they turn on TV and they see Kid Rock going to beer cans that have Dylan Mulvaney's face on it. What is that trans kid hearing? Think. Both sides, the rhetoric on both sides is so irresponsible relative to the downstream approach as to how that's going to affect kids, but who cares? So now here she is. She's going for the blood in the Shark Tank. Dylan Mulvaney, blah, 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 blah. We don't care what we say is going to affect young trans people, etc., etc. We're just going to bring up Dylan Mulvaney because he's red meat. What was Dylan Mulvaney's crime? What's his crime? Taking advantage of a cultural moment to make money for himself? Like he's not doing anything. He's not going around kids trying to influence. Like he dude's just living his life. Like you can't let him live his life. Like relax, dude. Like I got a real problem. I got a real problem with that. I feel bad for him, and I also feel bad for kids who. Because his presentation is very welcoming, very I love you, very bright, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, man, I'm not going to lie. I've had to pray for the homie this week. And all the kids that are going to be damaged because we want to play tug of war with people's lives. We continue.
Bud Light, right? Make no mistake.
Oh.
That is a guy dressed up like a girl making fun of women. Women don't act like that.
Yeah, I mean, people have to. You got to contend with that fact, man. You know, when Mulvaney came out, man, there was a lot of really angry women, and that's actually how I found out about Mulvaney. Was that a lot of women were really, really angry. And look, call it what you want. Call it what you want. But I know what it's like to be a black dude and have white people have all these opinions about how I'm supposed to feel. I can't tell these women how to feel about that shit. Like that's how they feel. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them. That's how they feel. And no, it's not just far-right women that feel this way, as Anna tried to demonstrate. But what Anna shows us is that when somebody does try to say something, people like Emma and the rest of them are going to try to take her head off. And so now, the only time that the Anna Kasparians of the world, Anna Kasparian being a left-wing white woman that wants to live in a country safely, now she's just not going to say that shit out loud. But she is going to say it in the voting booth, though. Anna's not going to bring it up. She's not going to talk about it again, I don't think. But in the voting booth, she's going to get her vengeance, I assure you. We continue.
Yet everybody's wondering why a third of our teenage girls seriously contemplated suicide last year?
It's sick.
What are we doing to them?
Well, I don't think I don't I don't think I don't know what the numbers are. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I given the fact that folks with gender dysphoria account for less than 1% of our society, and yeah, I mean you can inflate that number because of the meme stuff with the mental whatever. Okay, so you could push it to 1 to 3%. But I do not believe that 1 to 3% of the population is increasing the suicidality of all females in this country. I think that is absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy to try to make a connection between the suicidality of kids in America and this one group of people who account for about 1 to 3% of the populace, most of whom are their friends. That's the other thing. It's not like these trans kids are coming from like Yugoslavia or some like different country. A lot of these people grew up together. Nikki? So Susie is not contemplating unaliving herself because there is a girl in the on the boys basketball team or vice versa. Ridiculous! Ridiculous. We continue.
We're
Sorry,
supposed to be
but
growing
it is sick
strong
to
girls,
invoke.
confident girls.
I'm so sorry.
It is sick to invoke that statistic and blame it on a person who
Trans
did an
people
ad
existing.
for Bud Light.
Yeah.
I agree. I will say though that turning on the TV or whatever and seeing and being trans or being trans adjacent or being a trans ally, you've got a trans friend that you love, and then you turn on TV and it's always this culture war shit, blah 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 blah. Then you see Kid Rock and saying that's how we feel, and then everybody being like yeah and all that. That might drive somebody to suicidal ideation. That kind of violence and hateful rejection of you as a whole, that might do it. But the existence of transgender people or a trans person in a locker room is going to drive these kids to suicide. I just think that's...
Teenage girls are killing themselves over Bud Light commercials.
And by the way, trans people do it too. This is something I've always I've wanted to call it, but I don't. Trans people do this too. If you don't call me by my pronoun, I'm going to kill myself, and if I kill myself, it's your fault because you didn't call me by my pronoun. Or if you don't give this an 11-year-old gender reassignment surgery, you're horrible, and your kid's going to go kill himself. This is what's happening right now to parents. Parents are being emotionally blackmailed that if you don't refer to their kid as he, him, or whatever, that their kid's going to jump off a bridge, which is a lie. It's a clearly demonstrable. Where were all the kids jumping off bridges when we were all growing up and boys were boys and girls were girls? Where are they? So both sides do this with the suicide thing. I'm sorry, but being transgender is not a thing. Having gender dysphoria is the issue. And gender dysphoria in and of itself is a really dramatic, horrible thing to deal with, and is not the fault of anyone in the main. For example, I had a friend who, male to female trans person, and when they went through puberty, they described being horrified at what they saw in the mirror, because their self-conception was that they were female, and then they looked in the mirror, and obviously puberty was saying, oh, no, you're not, right? And so that kind of, can you imagine that kind of traumatic experience where you feel yourself one way and then you look in the mirror and you're something completely opposite? You cannot blame the distress that person is dealing with on their parents, which is what a lot of you guys do, which is really, really fucked up. Really, really fucked up. Especially considering that transitioning and then having a culture that supports you all the time has not been proven definitively to reduce the suicidality of trans people. Go look at California. And San Francisco specifically. Stop it. Both sides need to stop with this bullshit. I cannot stand it. I'm a person who's had multiple suicides in my family, as well as people I've been close to, and the factors that lead to suicide are legion, and to blame one specific group either way I think is completely bullshit, and is using the dead cadavers of these trans people in order to drag them out, dig them up, exhume them, so that we could put the cadaver of all these dead trans people, and then we could say, this is why we need this legislation. Either way, fuck all of you for doing that. Seriously, we continue.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, let
talk
alone
about
the fact.
Correct. I just have to say this. Wouldn't black people be killing themselves like crazy if being repressed by society led to suicide? Correct. I'm sorry. I'm not. It's a horrible argument that most of the time is used on the pro-trans side against their opponents. But in this case, Nikki Haley did it. Both cases are absolutely horrible, terrible people for doing so. We continue.
That the suicide rate for trans kids is just astronomically higher than everybody else because
proportionate to the population of trans people as well.
But right, because right, exactly. I mean, right, when you adjust for that, like it's what you're saying right now that's contributing to that. It's the hostility that you are creating to make trans people not have a safe place to exist in our.
See, that's the current line. So they're just fighting fire with fire. Nikki Haley saying all these girls have increased suicidality because these trans people. Here comes Emma. Oh, no. All these trans people are suicidal because they have bad parents. Stop it, Emma. You have no idea what you're talking about. There is no definitive evidence that is the case. That is your theory, and I understand why you have that theory. But again, gender dysphoria itself is a psychological condition. And I don't care what anybody says about that, because I have been on record of I have a bunch of psychological conditions. I was hospitalized for it for half of a year. So don't come at me and say that's transphobic to say that gender dysphoria is a psychological malady. It is. And a lot of us are revealing our ableist ideology when we try to deny that or get insulted by that. Yeah, I have mental issues that absolutely affect the way that I work, live, and affect the people around me. And I'm not going to blame anybody. I was born with major depressive disorder. My mother did not do that to me. Now, look, there were certain kinds of upbringings that I had that did not help. But my folks loved me the best that they could. They had their own issues. They raised me in ways that they thought was right or wrong. And, yep, there were some points where I got really, really close to completing suicide, but it was not my parents' fault. I was born with multiple psychological maladies, dear listener. And there's kids that are born with certain psychological maladies. And you cannot blame the parents for that. It is obvious to me. Now, look, Emma doesn't have any children, so she could just willy-nilly go out and say shit like that. You get a bunch of people that don't have any kids that are just willy-nilly saying all types of crazy shit. Do I think that conservative parents make the best decisions when their kids come out and tell them that they're gay or trans or whatever? Do I think they react the best? No, I do not. But from time immemorial, kids and their parents have been at war with each other. When has there been a time when teenagers and their parents have ever been looked upon as getting along swimmingly? And why aren't so according to these people, the suicide rate should be dropping exponentially, because all these kids for all time, they were really trans, they just didn't know it yet. So now that we know people are trans and transing kids is going to save their lives, then the rate should drop precipitously. But it hasn't. As a matter of fact, recently it's risen. So obviously, that correlation is one of those situations where you talk about the correlation versus causation fallacy. They are correlated, but there's no scientific data that says definitively that they're absolutely causative. Especially when you look at the Johns Hopkins studies that talk about how even after people get successful reassignment surgery, their suicidal ideation and completion really hasn't changed much. If we truly care about trans people, then we would get to the root as to why they're unaliving themselves at the rates that they do, and not assume that if culture was completely reorganized, that would keep them alive. We continue.
society.
And for what? To get literally not a single nod of recognition at an event for your like hapless candidacy that where you're polling at 2%.
Yeah.
To get a book or a consultancy deal out of it. It's just like if it wasn't so despicable, it would be as pathetic as it is despicable.
I agree. I think the entire both establishments are taking a very vulnerable group of people and using them for their own ends, and I think it's horrible. But this guy's absolutely right about that.
And this is not just like the way that the video looks, because Dave Weigel of Semaphore was there, and I saw his tweet before I saw the video, and he said it was like eerie how there was just, you could hear a pin drop after she essentially
like, you're not Jeff Foxworthy, Nikki Haley. Like, you're not gonna get like clap lines from like, everyone heard of Bud Light.
Yeah. Sorry, Binder, you wanted to say something?
I mean, you can't, if you're listening to the podcast, you can't really, I think, get the full effect of just like her mannerisms too when she's saying this. Like when she's like, "You've all heard of Dylan Mulvaney," and like she looks at the crowd like, "Yeah, you're all right on board with me. We all know the story of this trans influencer on TikTok who got like a one-off can of beer from Bud Light." And the right-wingers online turned it into a culture war issue to attack all trans people. I mean, actually, I guarantee you most people had no idea this even went on. Most people don't even know who Dylan Mulvaney is. Yeah. Most people don't even...
Yeah, I don't think that that's true. I don't think that that's true at all. And I don't think that you even need to go there. I think he made the point. The point is... conservatives, you got your pound of flesh. You won on the Bud Light thing. You clearly won on the Target thing. You won on the Dodgers thing. Great. And that's all you have to say about it. This, to me, is overkill. The whole Dylan Mulvaney, let's go out. It's overkill, and I think it's horrible. And I do think, even though what I just previously said, I do think, though, that the environment that gets created because of trans activism and because of anti-trans activism would lead a kid to be like, oh my God, because there are no more adults in the room. That's the problem. Both of these groups of people are not functioning like adults. They're using these kids as a political tool, but they're not functioning like adults, which is to protect children and keep certain things away from children. That's a big thing. It's one of the reasons my kids are in private school. One of the reasons I'm the only one that educates them. We continue.
Know that there was some sort of Bud Light blowback from the right wing. Like, these people are so...
There it is again. The blowback was not from the right wing. If it was from the right wing, then the Starbucks protest would have gotten some ground. It's not just the right wing. Protests like this, boycotts like this, do not get successful unless there was a coalition of multiple groups. When we had the sit-ins in the 60s and we had folks refusing to get up from the back of the bus, those were white folks going to jails along with black folks. And that's how we turned the tide. Okay? That's what's going on. If you think that in a country full of 320 million people, if you think that something that where a company can lose billions in a week, if you think that's only right-wingers, you're deluded. We continue.
And the greatest thing is, like, people like Matt Walsh are out there talking about this thing, like their attack on Dylan Mulvaney, which in turn ended up being an attack on Bud Light. And now they're doing the same thing with Target, because Target unveiled like a line of Pride Month clothing, and so they're trying to...
I guess there was also something like combining pride and Satanism and the devil or something like that. It was pretty interesting stuff for sure.
Replicate the same thing on Target, and they're out there calling this all like big victories for them, yet clearly electorally this isn't a win, because they ran on this for the midterms and got pummeled.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think the mistake was running on that to get them pummeled, because obviously people talk about voting with their wallet. I think the mistake was those right-wingers who jumped on the Trump train, jumped on the whole 2020 was a sham thing, blah, blah, blah. Trumpism is a one, thankfully, is a one of one strategy that literally only Donald Trump can use. You had a lot of folks who were in battleground states that did the whole I'm pro-Trump thing, yada, 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 and I'm loyal to Trump, and 2020 was a sham, and you had people under severe economic duress that said, I don't care about that. I don't care about loyalty to Trump. We'll solve the Trump problem in 2024. What are you going to do for us right now? That was the issue in 2022. Not people saying, oh, you guys are being too mean to trans people. I wish it was. Trust me, I wish it was. But I don't think that that's the point of 2022. And I think you're going to see that in 2 years. We continue.
This is like normal people do not care about this stuff.
I think it continues to be a win for like online right-wing content creators who have made just on one.
Ian said this as soon as he said that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the line of boycotts was Matt Walsh's idea. Correct. Correct. People were laughing at Ye for losing millions. Now Adidas is making money for him. I know. It's very satisfying. We continue.
Channel 12, 18, 24 videos about the Bud Light commercial, I guess. I don't even remember what the format for like their outrage was, like what they were specifically mad of. But let's say ad featuring Dylan Mulvaney.
That's the funny thing. It wasn't even an ad. It was a video that Dylan Mulvaney uploaded to TikTok herself. Basically, in order to like reach different markets, Bud Light like did like a sponsor deal for like one.
It was an influencer post,
social media post.
Okay.
Yeah, and like they sent her like a can of Bud Light with her face on it.
So this is like far right.
About.
Yeah, this is far right outrage culture, but it's incredibly online. It's incredibly like, you know.
Again, Matt Walsh was definitely the mouthpiece for it. But if you think it was only right wingers that were behind this, okay, all right. You notice how they're not talking about the Starbucks protests and all the other failed protests that were supposed to. Wasn't there? There was supposed to be a protest. There was supposed to be a boycott of another thing recently as well. And they just all failed. They just all failed. But these last couple ones have been massively successful. And there's no left-wing breakdown as to why some failed and why some didn't. We continue.
The hate is cultural, obviously. The sort of like the fear and hatred of trans people amongst sort of our secular Christian nation or secularized Christian nature is very real. But the level of esotericism, I guess, that is attached to these sorts of YouTube videos, arguments that they're sort of pushing out in front of the, you know, average American voter who just wants to go to Disney World.
Esotericism? There's nothing esoteric about. What are you talking about, bro? This is just like esotericism. What are you talking about? It has nothing to do with that. People are weird, man. I do find a lot of this. There's some pseudo-intellectual bullshit on some left-wing strains. I gotta say, especially around Majority Report folks. There's no esotericism around. There's nothing esoteric about people saying, I do not want to have this stuff in my face 24/7. Nothing esoteric about that. We continue. People are weird, bro, for real.
Honestly, just wants to go to Disney World, just wants to watch sports. They don't like being interrupted watching those things, but they're not spending all their time like watching YouTube videos. That's a very small portion even of the Republican Party's own base.
Well, to your point, Brandon, like they're having a hard time squaring the high numbers for like Matt Walsh's anti-trans stuff with what actually translates to voters. And the reality is just.
And as I said, Trumpism is the problem. You wait till 2024 and see what happens, because those folks are going to make adjustments. Watch what happens. We continue.
Like, yeah, the right-wing media ecosystem is over-focused on it for their own set of like financial goals that don't really translate electorally. Honestly, it's just a bunch of hateful people that keep like clicking on that content. But just back to kind of what she said there. First of all, Ryan and Callie points out that's her please clap Jeb Bush moment, a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Two, her entire thing about what am I going to tell my daughter? I don't know, dude. I don't know, you're a bad mom if you can't explain this to your kid. You're a bad mom if you can't explain that there are people along a gender spectrum and it's not this binary. Like, I mean, I hear this all the time. My daughter plays sports. What am I going to tell to her? You know, it's not fair to her to compete with this kind of person. Honestly, you know, I have a sports podcast.
The nerve. The nerve of leftists who purposely do not have children or kill them, now telling us what makes for a good or a bad parent it's peak level 2023, dear listener. This is peak 2023. Emma Vigeland, whatever your name is, no disrespect to Shorty, you don't have any children. This girl has no children, and she's gonna tell us what makes her a good mom or a good dad. And if you cannot explain to your 14-year-old who's beginning puberty and feels all strange and awkward about her body, if you can't explain to her that Jack with the fully erect penis in the locker next to her is still it's a girl penis. And if 14-year-old Susie is uncomfortable with Jacqueline's girl penis, fully erect girl penis, you are a bad mother for not getting your daughter to be okay with that. Allahu Akbar. I don't give a damn if she has a sports podcast. This is an intersection of sports and gender and sex, and holy shit, this is completely why I know this movement is doomed. This is a doomed movement. If this is what it produces, it's doomed. I'm looking at 3 individuals right now who probably have 1 kid between the 3 of them, who have no self-awareness whatsoever. You are a bad parent if you can't get this right. Holy smokes.
I love sports as much as anyone. Trans women should be able to compete without a thing about what am I going to tell my daughter? I don't know, dude. I don't know. You're a bad mom if you can't explain this to your kid. You're a bad mom if you can't explain that there are people along a gender spectrum and it's not this binary. Like, I mean, I hear this all the time. My daughter plays sports. What am I going to tell to her? You know, it's not fair to her to compete with this kind of person.
It's not. It wasn't fair that Fallon Fox busted the eye socket of 2 girls because he's a biological man and he's in a ring fighting and beating the hell out of girls. I mean, we got 2 girls with broken eye sockets, and I don't know if you guys know much about. I don't know if you guys know very much about combat sports, but it is extremely rare for women to be able to generate and strike with that kind of force. Amanda Nunes is known as having some really heavy hands in UFC. She didn't break Ronda Rousey's eye socket. She didn't crack her skull. Dudes do that. Dudes do that because we can generate, because we've got the torque, we've got certain kinds of muscular skeletal structures or whatever that can generate a bunch of pressure that women do not have. And that is one of the 18 trillion reasons, Emma, that we have a men's division and a women's division in sports. People could literally die. What a weirdo. Holy smokes. We continue.
Honestly, I have a sports podcast. I love sports as much as anyone. Trans women should be able to compete without question in women's sports, because there are a lot of instances where there are athletes who, there's not even evidence to show that this is the case, but just take their assertion at face value for.
Okay. She says there's not enough evidence to show. There's no evidence to show. See, this is a problem that these people have. Like, they don't realize something. Aunt Emma, 5 years ago, you would not have been saying this nonsense. Emma, you grew up with a girls' team in high school and a boys' team in high school. All of us knew this shit 5 years ago. We know there are exceptions. We know that in any group of people, there's going to be a 1 to 3% exception or aberration from the norm. What we don't do is structure society around the 1% abnormality at the expense of the 99. We don't do that. It's not what we do. We continue.
Second, that this is some unfair advantage. I mean, there's an unfair advantage all the time in sports. That's actually quite that's the nature of sports. That some people are physically or more gifted, or they have like a better mentality. We should have banned Yao Ming from basketball because he's just too tall. It's not fair for everybody else.
The children of professional athletes, through like having wealthy parents and access to gyms and like say height genetics, they have advantage.
I mean, Serena Williams, her serve is faster, was way faster than the other women. I mean, it's time to ban her. I mean, Tiger Woods, I've used this. He was playing golf from like age 3 or 5. He's a prodigy. He had an unfair advantage. He had more practice, and he was younger than the other golfers when he was competing against them. I mean, I don't know.
It's important to know that, like,
okay, these arguments only work for people who know nothing about sports, which it appears to me that this audience obviously knows nothing about sports. Now, this young lady's claiming, she's claiming that she just grew up with sports and she's got a sports show, blah, 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 blah. So she should know, above all people on this platform, why what she's saying is patently ridiculous. Emma, Yao Ming is over 7 feet tall. That's true. Why is Yao Ming different than Joe, who is now 6'3"? Here. Let's do this. Unbelievable. Here we go. What Emma is saying is that because Yao Ming was born as a 7 foot tall individual, that is the same. That's completely the same as having this individual go up against this individual in a rugby match. She's saying those are the same thing. No, they are not. What a ridiculous argument. Dear listener, if it was revealed that Yao Ming was taking a steady diet of pills that made him go from 6'2" to 7'1", guess what would happen to Yao Ming? He would be gone. He would be gone. Why? Because you're taking something, they call it performance-enhancing drugs. You're doing something to your body that is not natural to give yourself a competitive advantage. There's a reason that Barry Bonds is not in the Hall of Fame, even though numerically and statistically speaking, he should be. Why not? It's because he took steroids during the steroid era. Same thing with Mark McGwire. Same thing with Sammy Sosa. How come those boys are not in Cooperstown? Because they took something that gave them an unnatural advantage over others. Emma, if Yao Ming did something synthetic that took away his natural advantages, he would get expelled from the National Basketball Association. Same thing with football, etc., etc. Emma? Yes, Barry Bonds, even though he took steroids and had set home run records, there were still pitchers that struck him out. There were still pitchers that pitched him into a pop fly in the infield. Just because he took performance-enhancing drugs doesn't mean he's going to have a perfect record. In the same way, when Leah Thomas beats the rest of the field by literally 2 minutes in a swim meet, I'm supposed to now look at that and say, well, I mean, that's the same thing as Yao Ming. No, it's not. Leah Thomas has an unnatural advantage over the girls because it makes for the very reason that we have separate divisions in the first place. The very reason that we had divisions between girls and boys was because boys are orders of magnitude stronger than women. It's interesting to me that she brought up Serena Williams. Serena Williams explicitly stated that she would never play tennis against a man because she doesn't want to be embarrassed. She said that there are unranked tennis players who could kick the shit out of her in tennis. Okay? So the reason we split these groups in the first place was for women to have the opportunity to enjoy sport. If you don't do that, the only people who are going to suffer are women. Do you think, there's no protest about female to male trans people going into the NBA and destroying the NBA? You don't see dudes complaining about that. Somebody asked me one time, well, what if a female to male trans went into your bathroom? I wouldn't care. I don't care. And neither does any other man on the planet. We don't care about that shit. The only way an argument like this works is if Emma and the rest of them can successfully convince us that there are literally no differences between men and women, and that's just a lie. We continue.
Aaron Rodgers' hands are bigger than a lot of other quarterbacks. Let's ban him.
Well, and the extent to which we understand what the actual differences are on these things, like we have very little understanding to the point where last Olympics you saw women who, as far as I know, biological women assigned female at birth, told you can't actually run in this because you have we've done tests and your levels are not acceptable, which is insane.
Yeah, if your kid is competing against a trans woman, it's an opportunity for you to say, hey, sometimes life's not fair, and if you want to beat her in this track meet, you better train really hard. In fact,
if you want to be a guy, guys, I'm sorry. Here's where I'm at. I'm willing. Look, man, God loves everybody, and I'm very sensitive to suicidal ideation for obvious reasons, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But holy shit, this is just a logical, irrational madness. Wait a second. Life isn't fair. You are now competing against a dude, and you have to train harder to compete with this dude. Otherwise, it's your fault. Life isn't fair. So that means this is a true story. Truman High School, the wrestling team was like a world-renowned wrestling team. All them boys was on steroids, every single one of them. Shout out to Coach Kozak. Coach Kozak died early. I'm not gonna talk about that. But them boys were all roided up. They're all pumped full of steroids. I guess Emma would have the same response. Hey, I understand that you're competing against a girl hopped up with all these steroids and shit, but that just means you have to practice harder because you couldn't beat her. This is incredible. This is just. I just don't. This is what I'm saying. Like this shit right here. It's doomed. It's absolutely and totally doomed to failure. This ideology is completely doomed to failure. You're gonna tell me that I'm supposed to tell my daughter if she plays track and field. Look, don't even look at the arms. Forget about the arms. Just look at the legs. Look at the thighs. I'm supposed to tell my daughter, hey girl, if you can't beat this dude, you should have just practiced harder. What is going on? I mean, come on, guys. This is. Can we? Come on, everybody. Please, can we just be real? Emma doesn't believe this. There's no way. You cannot convince me. You cannot convince me that Emma thinks that this is okay. You cannot convince me that Emma thinks that this situation right here is okay, and that this is just a matter. Look at the arm. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, look at this. Look at the leg. Look at the leg down there. Look at that. That's where you generate all of your power for the vast majority of these sports. This poor girl is grabbing full strength. Please, do you think she's going to be able to do anything? And then what's happening to this poor girl over here? I mean, guys, this is insanity. This is ridiculous. I'm supposed to tell my daughter, hey, you go up against that guy in rugby, no problem, you know, hey.
That's like a pretty good hallmark of like a parent that's engaging in their child's sport in a productive way.
Look at her, she's laughing. Even she knows she's full of shit. Come on, guys. Come on. See, this is my problem. We can't be real. Now we're saying all this fantastical shit. I mean, this is crazy.
I mean, yes, and also this for me fits into that same bucket of things like I always bring up, where parents complain about their kids not getting into Harvard because of theoretical affirmative action case, a theoretical, not even legacy, because they never complain about that, but the affirmative action case takes their job. And the reality is, like, the people complaining are always people who weren't going to make it in anyway. It's always 20th place.
That's not true. That's not true. That's not true. We've ran into people in 4th place and all the rest of it who've lost scholarships. The two black trans athletes who decided that they were going to run in the female thing, and they literally got 1 and 2, placed 1st and 2nd. I'm sorry, the people that placed 4th and 5th have a legitimate beef. What are you talking about? This is mind-boggling.
In the race, it's always someone with a 3.4 GPA and no extracurriculars who wants to go to Harvard, but feels like they deserve to be there. And it just paints a picture of people who just feel as though their place is being threatened by the introduction of minority groups.
No, girl sports are absolutely being threatened by the influx of biological males who completely have a competitive advantage that we've recognized since time immemorial, which is why we divided the sports by sex as well as weight class. My wife and kids, they think I can beat everybody up on the planet. But if I went to the UFC, I'd be in the welterweight weight class. There's reasons. There are physical realities that are just there, that on this platform that we call the physical world, we see certain patterns, and so we adjust accordingly. Holy shit. These three should be a comedy trio. Yeah, exactly, Ranter Matt. Conor McGregor versus Brock Lesnar. Yeah, let's see that happen. We continue. Holy shit. These people are terrible.
Into traditionally white spaces, male spaces, cis hetero spaces that they just feel are designated for.
You notice how he didn't say female spaces? Why didn't you say female spaces when literally the entire argument right now is about what's happening to female spaces? Why would you leave them out in your analysis? I'm going to play that again. This is very important.
Paints a picture of people who just feel as though their place is being threatened by the introduction of minority groups into traditionally white spaces, male spaces, cis hetero spaces that they just feel are.
See, white spaces, male spaces, and he specifically then says cis hetero spaces. He completely doesn't talk about female spaces. Why? Very simple. Because in the left, you're supposed to always advocate for women. Women are always right. They're always a victim, except in this specific situation. But he can't say intrusion into female spaces, because then women would be the bad guy, and he can't do that because he's got cognitive dissonance because he's on a left foot channel. It's very interesting to see. Tasco, send me the clip of that video, and I'll go over it. We continue.
Designated for them to use.
You catch that? You caught that, right, Soraya? You caught that, how he left out women's spaces?
To get ahead in various social situations or in life.
Kevin Hart versus The Rock. Right. Let's just, everybody, we'll just take down all distinctions. We're not going to account for any sort of biological or like physical reality. Kevin Hart versus The Rock. Also, if you're Tara Reid, apparently you're a Russian agent now. Shout out to Tara Reid. I fuck with Tara Reid. Heavy!
In general.
What,
And
what did
it's not
conservatives
supposed to be a
always say?
competition.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Brandon, but what do conservatives always say? Like, what the liberals and their participation trophies. I mean, not everyone gets to be number one. Sorry, not everybody gets to be number one.
And also,
Listen. I can definitely see how a lot of people would be offended, like how women would be offended and people who love women's sports would be offended. I'm laughing because I know there is no way in hell these people are going to win. There is no way. This is completely irrational. And you got to do a bunch of emperor has no clothes bullshit to know that you're going to shoot a video that's going to go out to thousands of people and say this dumb shit with a marginally straight face. There is no way that this is going to go over well. This right here is actually one of the biggest Achilles heels of this movement. This is a major Achilles. If I was part of this movement, I would be like, yo, we need to get out of sports immediately and pretend that we never did this dumb shit. That's what I would do. This is bad strategy, but I mean, keep it up. You This is why I'm saying, like, this is why I tweeted. All the other boycotts just crashed and burned. These last couple ones have been massively successful. If you want to put it all on Matt, the dude from Daily Wire, Matt Walsh, go ahead. But to be honest with you, I think responses like these are way more responsible than Matt Walsh relative to that. We continue.
like the idea that trans people go into these things and just clean up is that's not actually the case. The idea, the advantage isn't actually that clean.
No, that's literally the case. That's literally the case. We've documented this. We've documented this. Leah Thomas was like 2 minutes above everybody else in the pool. And then when that video came out, all of a sudden Leah Thomas started tying with everyone. Man, get out of here, bro. Come on, man. We all know what it is. We continue.
You only ever hear about it, though, if a trans person has some sort of success.
Exactly.
You just, and
the most ridiculous one I saw, and I had to look this up because I remember it, and I remember. So this was like last month or 2 months ago. The right wing was going crazy over this trans woman running in the women's marathon in London or something, and they were complaining that all the women who placed after this trans woman, imagine how they felt. The trans woman placed in 6,159th place in the marathon. They were complaining over people who placed after the 6,159th place trans person. It is ridiculous.
Yeah, and I'll just say one final thing, because there's people who are really skeptical.
I mean, I didn't hear that happen, but it wouldn't surprise me if people were complaining about that for sure, and that would be ridiculous. But again, that doesn't negate that the previous stuff that you and the rest of y'all said was absolutely ridiculous and silly and afactual, and communicates to me that you're either an inveterate liar or you absolutely know literally nothing about how sports works. We continue.
This issue, to the extent that there would be like an unfair advantage in a certain sport or whatever, given say a trans person not given the ability to say go on puberty blockers or something like that, just to grant that is an issue for the athletics department. That is not a national politics issue, and it is insane. It is pathological that it has become a matter of political importance widely.
Whoa. That's a matter of the athletics department. Okay. Well, what have the athletics departments all over the world, what have they been doing in the last 6 months? Huh? What have the national athletics bodies, not just in America and right-wing America, but literally all across the world, what have they said about trans athletes and competition? They've banned them. A bunch of them. Okay? This is not an American right-wing issue. Over there in England, banned. Olympic cycling, banned. Okay? So if you leave it to athletic bodies, this issue will be done yesterday. Because if you leave it to people who actually do sports and are actually experts in the field, it is almost univocal that men and women should not be competing against one another. And I gotta tell my trans friends, I do not understand this push. You guys said that gender is what's in your head and biology is what's between your legs. I accept that dichotomy. But if that is the case, why is it that when you have in your head that you're an opposite gender, that now trumps what's between your legs, namely your actual physical body that you were given? You cannot change that. You're not going to change the broader shoulders, the bone structure. You're not going to change that. That's scientifically proven. So why this push to be part of something that is relative to the body, the somatic character of male and femaleness versus the ideology of male and femaleness? This is one of those things where I'm like, I don't understand where y'all are at with this. This doesn't make sense. Why make the distinction between gender and biology if in the practical world you're saying we're going to destroy all those distinctions anyway? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, we've naturalized girls' sports, right? As if they need to be like this incredible national priority. To be honest, the real national priority, to Matt's point there, is making sure that trans women and people have every opportunity to participate in the joys of life, in competition, in social institutions. And that means in sports, full stop.
No, I agree. It does mean in sports. And you know how you do it? There's a fight league. It's called Street Beefs, and it's a fight league. It's where these amateur fighters get in the backyard and fight. And they got this trans fighter by the name of Gash, male to female trans fighter by the name of Gash. And do you know what happens? Gash only fights dudes. But the dudes that they have Gash fight are extremely low skilled and extremely lightweight. And so they have people that Gash fights. Gash fights dudes. Now they refer to her as a she. They use he, her, blah, blah, blah. I mean, she, her. Everybody in the crew loves Gash. Gash, I think, got called Fighter of the Year for 2021 or whatever. And I got a hell of a lot of respect for Gash because, I mean, she gets the shit kicked out of her a lot. But she continues to compete, and she competes against boys. Now, there are girls in that company, but they don't fight Gash. That's the right thing to do. That's the right thing to do. If Fallon Fox wants to compete in UFC, she should fight men. Fight me, not my wife. So this is a false dilemma that this girl that Emma is creating. We're not going to deny trans people the joy of sport. Sport is a human right. Blah blah blah. That's true. That's true. But you know who else has the rights? Girls and women. They got the right. They got rights too, and they ought to be able to enjoy sports to their fullest potential. True, and putting them in a situation where they're faced with impossible odds that nobody else had to deal with. That men don't have to deal with. Men don't have to deal with a situation where somebody orders of magnitude stronger than them are competing in their league. Only women have to deal with that bullshit. We continue.
But that was one of her dumbest, aside points. But the macro point here about Nikki Haley is let's just put up this image of her really quickly. I just want to people, she presents herself. She's got that cross on, right? Or maybe that's not what she's wearing, right? Well, I don't know. I thought
No idea.
that was that. I
think it might be a South Carolina.
That doesn't matter. Yeah, but her campaign video, her entire kind of brand as a politician was that I was very reasonable as the United Nations ambassador. I am a.
To be honest with you guys, I don't know what point she's making here. It's kind of murky to me, but I'm going to let her say it out.
Respectable Republican politician. She is trying to look like she is an esteemed statesman. And even she feels the need to engage in this garbage anti-trans culture war stuff. And she's presenting herself as the more moderate option within the Republican Party, just to show how much this has like completely infected the brain of.
Okay, I see what you. Okay, so she's presenting herself as like the adult in the room, but then she goes and does the Mulvaney thing. Okay, which I agree with. And you know what? She didn't really look comfortable when she was doing it either. So I'm like, maybe like this is like her handlers told her to go here, but she doesn't really believe in it. And if you're gonna come after, if you're gonna talk about this topic, you need to know exactly where you're at and what you believe, because
Republican voters, general Republican voters, the big base, not the ones sitting in New Hampshire there. But that she even feels the need that she has to do that.
Yeah, she's trying to like hit DeSantis on. You're going way over there with the culture war stuff. You're even making Disney want to leave, and then also doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And the necklaces, in fact, South Carolina palm tree.
Gotcha. Thing. Right. I think I made that mistake before. Slam Cedar, Emma, there's tons of evidence regarding testosterone levels in height, strength, and speed between people with XX chromosomes and XY chromosomes. Matt's citation off cases about the Olympics is pertinent, but an argument for better planning and more transparent discussions. Your argument is really bad on this, and you're out of your depth. You're correct that trans women should be able to compete in women's sports, but your argument for it is just scientifically and factually incorrect. I'm actually...
So this guy is saying, scientifically and factually speaking, biological men will always have an inordinate advantage over women. And then in the same breath, he says they should still be able to compete in sports. So, but you're wrong. Well, if you say that scientifically speaking, men will always have this advantage over women, then in what sense can you then in the same breath say that biological men should be competing in sports, especially combat sports, against women? That's completely it's completely contradictory. I mean, I agree. Obviously, we all know you don't need scientific data. I mean, we're going to go to scientific data because people are, whatever. But everybody knows this. I just showed you guys the picture. There is a bodybuilder guy who claimed he was trans and completely destroyed everybody. Destroyed everybody on the fucking... You guys got to figure this shit out. And to be honest with you, even Brianna Joy Gray, who is very... To me, Brianna makes it clear that this is an emotional issue for these folks, because Brianna's brilliant, Harvard educated, but then the dumbest stuff that she says when she's addressing the trans issue. So it looks to me like there's a lot of hysteria on both sides relative to this topic. But holy shit, here we go.
Not bad about this. I'm 100% right on this. I think I made that mistake before. Slam Cedar, Emma, there's tons of evidence regarding testosterone levels in height, strength, and speed between people with XX chromosomes and XY chromosomes. Matt's citation off cases about the Olympics is pertinent, but an argument for better planning and more transparent discussions. Your argument is really bad on this, and you're out of your depth. You're correct that trans women should be able to compete in women's sports, but your argument for it is just scientifically and factually incorrect. I'm actually not bad about this. I'm 100% right on this. I don't give a shit about the scientific explanations. People, if they identify as a woman, get to compete in sports. If that's not fair in the short term for a variety of little competitions, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit, because the societal interest of including trans people in society trumps stupid competition. Full stop. So I'm right about this. You're wrong about this.
So I put this quote up in on Twitter, and I said, "This is how you, as an ally, can destroy the movement that you're trying to promote." Dear listener, let's think this through. This woman is a secularist. Secularists do not have... this is not a criticism, it's an observation. Secularists do not have an overarching reservoir for absolute truth. So, for example, me as a Christian, I have the Bible, right? And Muslims have the Quran and Sunnah. Secularists don't have anything. You cannot even establish an understanding of what truth is and how to apprehend truth and apply truth in the real world. You can't even get those policies down from a secularist worldview. So when she says, I'm right on this, on what basis is she right on it? Because secularists don't have an overarching religion that dictates right and wrong, secularists for the last 50 years at least have relied on science, right? I mean, that's been the thing. It's like, you guys have your silly religion over there, okay? But we have science. That's been the thing. But what happens when science is over here and your ideology is over here? You then say, man, forget the science. But the problem is, okay, then on what basis, what do we use to determine truth then? Because we don't have a Bible, we don't believe in God, because we're postmodern and we're brilliant. And we don't need the silly religion like those cavemen back there. No, we're modern people. We've got iPhones, for God's sake. Okay, great. So let's get rid of the Bible. Okay, we don't need any spiritual input. Okay, we could just make it up as we go along based on scientific observation. So then somebody comes up and says, here's what the science is saying. And Emma says, I don't care. I'm right, you're wrong. I don't care. Well, on what basis are you right, Emma? Because I said so, obviously. You see how angry she got? Why would you be so angry? This is a guy that's on your team. This is your team. This is a guy saying, you're wrong about this. You're out of your depth. I had a conversation with somebody. They said something about Trump. And I said, well, I mean, obviously what they did to him was unconstitutional. And she goes, what are you talking about? Nothing was done unconstitutional, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, no, look at the Durham report. The Durham report explicitly states that the FBI, like, literally went after him unconstitutionally. Ah! And it was all an exercise in her ego because she hadn't read the Durham report, so she was embarrassed. So there was a whole... Anyway. Taddy says, that's not fair to blame on secularists just because she's got no core principles, though. She doesn't represent all secularists. Taddy's, that's why I spent a lot of time being very, very nuanced in what I was talking about. Secularism doesn't have a God, right? You don't have a God and you don't have a standard for absolute truth. And so because of that vacuum, you have replaced that with science. And you guys used to say, okay, we've got the science, you can have faith, you guys stay over there. What I'm saying is, what happens with secularism now, because it's secular humanists that are pushing this major trans stuff, is that the science is now in cross purposes with their ideology. So instead of saying, I need to augment the ideology or I just need to get rid of it, what she says is, man, screw the scientists. That's the problem. I hope I clarified that. We continue.
Anyway, Dr. Shock, I agree. Let's get rid of weight classes in all combat sports. Perhaps have grown man compete in Little League. Sometimes life's not fair.
That's right. We'll have a... See, this is one of the things that these folks have not answered. If gender is something I can feel, if I could be born with all the markers and scientific markers of maleness, but because I feel or think that I am a woman, if that's able to be trans, why is race something that is not something I can transition to? Furthermore, why is age something I can't? You do realize that race and age are much harder to make objective than gender, than sex. You realize that, right? Like, for example, if I got picked up by the police, I would, they'd say, da-da-da-da-da, black male. Okay, I'm wearing a black shirt, right? But I'm characterized as a black male. I'm not black, and you are not white. So my point is, race is just this sort of arbitrary thing on some weird scale that none of us really knows about and really doesn't truly exist. But gender does. Gender's black and white. Race is not. So when Rachel Dolezal said, I'm black, why is that wrong? Furthermore, the same thing is true for age. Dear listener, how people account for age is different with everybody. So, for example, we've got a giant Somali community here. Everybody here is born on January 1st, 1990. It's everybody's birthday. Okay? Okay? So, my point here is simple. If biological sex, which is more objective than a person's age and their race, if biological sex can be transed out, then how comes race can't be transed out, and how comes age can't be transed out? That's a serious question. Now, this dude just said, why don't we just have adults competing against kids? And if the kids don't like it, you know, we could just say, hey, man, life isn't fair. I want to see how she answers that argument.
Interest of including trans people in society trumps stupid competition. Full stop. So I'm right about.
And it also trumps your scholarship, black girl from the hood. See, I could tell. The people like Emma only talk about white privilege when they're going after Republicans. You guys know this on the show, right? Anytime I go after white people on the left, they react the same way that white people on the right do when you call them racist. That's why I never believe that people on this side of the aisle actually love my people. They don't. But notice here the privilege that's being spoken of here. You got people, and you don't stop. Either you're selling drugs or you got a mean-ass jump shot. Sports has been a way out of poverty for so many people of color. And she wants a world where some white dude could just randomly say, you know what? I'm a woman. Go out there and get all those scholarships, and then Shaniqua gets to work at the Safeway for the rest of her life. Oh, no. This has real world ramifications, Emma. Now, I know you probably didn't come up in an environment where you getting a scholarship was your only ticket to higher education and a better life, but there are hundreds of thousands of people at the poverty line where that is the case. So you can say, oh, stupid competition, because you're an established individual and you're financially secure and you're educated. But there's a lot of people who are depending on that shit for their survival and their entire future, Emma. So you can spike the football all you want, but this is what I've said a million times. This movement is a largely male, white, privileged movement, and they do not care about the effects on anybody else. This is not a group of people who are marginalized and being shoved in. That is not what we're dealing with here with this movement. Think about this. Were black people carrying on like this during the civil rights movement? Were even gay people carrying on like this when they were trying to get marriage equality? Nope. This is the first time in the history of downtrodden people in this country where they've said, we're going to fuck up everything. We're going to destroy every standard we've ever had. Abuse women's clinics, prisons, everything is going to change for 1% of biological men. This is not a group of people who are downtrodden. This is a group of people that want what they want, and they believe they're going to get what they want, and they don't give a fuck how it affects anybody else. Full stop. They're right, you're wrong. Doesn't matter what math says. Doesn't matter what science says. Definitely doesn't matter what God says. Doesn't really matter what the girls say. Nope. This is a group of privileged individuals who believe that the world belongs to them. That is a fact.
You're wrong about this. Anyway, Dr. Shock, I agree. Let's get rid of weight classes in all combat sports. Perhaps have grown man compete in Little League. Sometimes life's not fair. Whatever.
Notice how she doesn't respond to the argument. Whatever is not a response. Well, it is a response. It means I really can't deal with the logical ramifications of silliness I just said, so I'm just going to say whatever because I just did this this pseudo-righteous kind of grandstanding about how it doesn't matter what science or math or anything says because my ideology is right, and I'm going to impose my ideology on everybody. This is what I said. Like when people say, you get to have your religion, you just don't get to impose it on people. Man, be quiet. Would you be quiet? All of us are trying to impose our Sharia onto everybody else. I'm not mad at her because she's trying to impose that on everybody else. I'm just saying I disagree with you. I don't believe we should impose that on people. I think we should reimpose biological men operating with biological men and biological women. I think we should go there. I reject your but again, it was the left that was telling us for years about how you can't impose stuff. But now I gotta talk to you a certain way. I gotta call you. You're controlling my language. And then if my wife doesn't like the term cis, you say, too bad, fucking turf. I'm gonna call you that anyway. Again, this is not how downtrodden people operate. This is how privileged people operate. This is how people who believe that the world belongs to them operates. This is not how downtrodden people operate.
Number 13, when Justice Thomas and Alito, but very specifically Thomas, expire, I literally will have an entire week of celebration. Gonna take off work and everything.
Okay, these people are talking about Samuel Alito and other people dying and celebrating the deaths of other people. I mean, okay. Look, these are hateful people. I mean, if you didn't know by now, when that girl went up and shot up that school, killed all those kids. The main concerns that this community had was that the girl was being misgendered. And of course they said, hey, actions have consequences relative to the legislation over there in Tennessee. Y'all better open your eyes about what's going on with folks. You want to talk about hate? These are hateful people. These are really, really hateful people, bro.
That made me mad. Sorry about that, guys.
No need to apologize. It's good to get mad about things sometimes.
I can't with this discussion. All right, let's do this really quickly, this Texas State House thing. And I'm sorry, guys, we're not going to have enough time for calls. We went a little over, and I'm turning on the voicemail. I really apologize.
That's probably for the best.
Now.
Right to your fucking athletic.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I enough. All right, guys.
It's not enough. It's not even close to be enough. You guys got a lot of fights on the way, and 90% of them are self-inflicted. 90% of them self-inflicted.
We're gonna wrap up. Read some.
Can I just make one point? Sure. The thing that occurred to me about that trans sports IM is they said the thing about we need to have a. They granted my point about the actually this has gone too far and we're disallowing what they call biological women from going on sports. But they say we need to have a nuanced conversation or something like that, right?
Yeah.
We were having that as a society until the GOP decided to make trans people a target of their political campaigns. So.
Oh, you could say that. You could say that. And I don't think that that's completely all untrue, but you have to take accountability for the fact that you guys started barging into people's bathrooms, barging into people's spaces, telling women, attaching names and terminologies to women when they said that they didn't. There's a whole bunch of shit that your side did that exacerbated all of these issues. Now, again, you want to say that the only people resisting you are Republicans, and the people that are going to vocally resist. I mean, I'm not a Republican, but as you guys know, I don't care what none of y'all think of me. But there are people who do care what other people think of them, though, and so they're not going to tell you how they feel because you're going to melt down like this, or you're going to go after Anna like you did instead of saying, you know what, there are not a lot of women. Instead of having some solidarity with your sister, solidarity with the person who advocated for you to get a spot, instead of rolling for your people, you went out and crucified Anna just like everybody else. But what you guys don't realize is that there are millions of Annas in the fucking country. Millions of them. You'll see. You'll see in 2024. You'll see.
That's the problem, and maybe we can get back to this, purely intramural academic debate about these things once the fascists start using them to animate their base.
Yeah, I mean, doctors and biologists were having detailed conversations about hormones and hormone levels and hormone therapy long before people who 10 years ago were making fun of women's sports, like openly mocking it, decided that this was the battleground for morality in the United States of America. Any ground.
Again, they have to do this. It wasn't Republicans, brother. I don't even know who you are. It wasn't, but I'm glad they let you on the show. I'm not even gonna go there. I'm sure you think they're your friends, bro. Listen, listen, guys. This was not an issue. Nobody was running around trying to destroy trans people back in the day. I grew up with trans people. We didn't do that. It was when less than 1% of the population decided that the entire culture of America needs to be upended for them that shit got crazy. Stop trying to rewrite history. Good night.
Concede to them based on like fake biology that none of them don't really understand.
Yeah.
Is too much ground, because it privileges things that just aren't true about gender, about sexuality, about biology, like just things that people think are true from 2 years of bio in high school, or maybe like a intro to bio class in college for gen ed credit.
My son is about 4 or 5 years old. He hasn't gone to intro to anything, but he knows when he sees a little girl down the street. He knows when he sees a boy down the street. See, some of this shit is like, this is one of the real flaws in this kind of liberalism. It's like it's like this. 2 minutes ago, Emma just said, I don't care what the scientists say. Now here comes this guy that's basically saying, none of you guys are scientists, so you guys aren't qualified to say what a man or a woman is. Well, which is it? Do we not care about science, or do we care about science? You guys got to figure out what the messaging is, because you guys are all over the place. We continue.
Yeah, and like you said, they'll pivot like right from being, I really care the sanctity of women's sports. Also, who watches the WNBA, and why do they keep yapping about how much they should get paid?
Yeah, right.
There was a Republican who just did that. I can't recall who. Someone literally just did exactly what you just said.
If anything,
what an irrational argument. Saying it is not fair that my daughter has to compete with a guy that's 6'4", 250, and because he changes his name from Charles to Charlene, and he wears a wig, so now my daughter's got to get in a ring or a basketball or whatever with somebody that's 6'2" and orders of magnitude. Yeah, I'm gonna have a problem with it. That doesn't mean that I don't think that the WNBA is fucking unwatchable. It is. I've got a guy right now I'm friends with, and his daughter is literally ranked in the top 100 of girls in the entire country, basketball-wise. She's ranked in the top 100. I'm not going to say what number she is, but but he is the most involved girl dad ever. Every game she plays, he's got all of her stats, all of her blocks. You could tell, like, his videos of him training his daughter, all the rest of it. Imagine all that effort being put into it, and then the daughter loses out because some 6'4" guy decides he's going to get into her space. That's what we're talking about. And you, Emma, said, man, I don't care about that. Everything that this girl has poured her entire soul into, her parents, the family, everybody coming around to support her, cheering her when she wins, being there when she loses, blah, 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 blah. And all of that can get undone because some 6'4" goon is going to decide and you're trying to tell me that because I don't watch the WNBA that we don't have an argument on the first issue? There's a reason these people don't debate these issues in the public square. There's a reason for that.
They were attacking the WNBA, probably something, what's her name again? Brittany Griner.
Brittany Griner.
Griner, yeah.
Brittany Griner! You know the black girl that was paraded around in Russia in a fucking cage for a year last year? That one? A woman? God almighty, these white liberals. I love how black people, you really think that these liberals, like, they love you? You really think they're on your side? Good night. What do you think? That's just weird. Guy didn't even know who Brittany Griner was. You don't have to be a sports person to know who Brittany Griner was. They were parading Shorty all over the place. Good night.
Yeah, and they were attacking the WNBA.
Then I have an example of it not being a right-wing thing. A Kansas Democrat representative, Marvin Robinson, helped Republicans pass anti-trans laws. Correct. Now, I don't know what those laws are, and I'm against the term anti-trans. If there is a article of legislation that says only biological women can be in a abused women's shelter, I would call that a pro-woman and pro-child legislation, not anti-trans legislation. But I see what you're saying. Remember, Kansas, who just had an abortion vote about a month or two after the Dobbs decision, which overwhelmingly went on the side of the abortionists. Kansas also says has passed some anti-trans legislation. The Democrat did. So that's my point. It's not just conservatives who have an issue with this. The conservatives are the only ones that will tell you to your face, though. That's the difference.
And then someone pointed out how this guy just went on about trans people, destroying the sanctity of women's sports in his vote against allowing trans people to take place in, in sports just earlier, like like in the month or something. It's incredible. It's even like our like examples of how ridiculous it could be is actually what's going on, because we are at the point where it's as ridiculous as can be.
Yeah, if anything, it shows like a very patronizing view of women's sports. Like it's just like a cute little girls' club where like women get together and play tennis and like the skirts and not like a real competition where you might have to face somebody who's better than you for any number of reasons, genetic or not. It's just like, well, if my daughter wants to run track and field and have a little fun after school, it's like, well, yeah, no one's stopping you from doing that. And basically, frankly, based on the way divisions work and the way intramural sports work, you can play sports at whatever level you want, any level of competitiveness. Mm-hmm. But once you get into a league where people actually play sports, you have to accept that you might be not very good at. How many best high school?
Okay, then answer the age thing then. Answer the age thing then. Or as Ranter Matt is saying, so women aren't better than other women? So if we don't put men in competition with women, that means we're patronizing women and saying that they can't compete? Why? Because women can't compete with each other? Women can't go after it against each other? The only way that we can look at something as real competition for women is if they're competing with men? It almost seems in that construct that women can only derive their value and identity from other men. What it looks like to me. SubhanAllah, we continue.
Athletes flame out in colleges once they're actually around people who are better or equally as good as they are. And, that's just the nature of competition. But treating like sports, like it can be, rather the treatment of women's sports, like it is both like a joke, but also this sanctified space, I think reveals a very like patronizing view of like what women need and deserve to feel space at, along with.
Women's sports is not a joke. It's just not as entertaining as watching men's sports because men can do things physically that women cannot. LeBron James can dunk from the free throw line. No woman can do that. I remember when I saw, I think it was Lisa Leslie in the WNBA, and she was the first one to dunk on camera, and it was Lisa Leslie. It was this great thing. It was like this amazing, oh my God, Lisa Leslie dunked, blah, 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 blah. Then I went outside to play pickup basketball, and everybody was dunking. I'm sorry, but there's just a lot. It is irrational to say that because the competition and the spectacle of women's sports is not as grandiose as men's sport, that then means that we can just do whatever to women's sports and say, it doesn't matter what happens to you because you guys aren't getting a $10 million contract anyway. Ridiculous! We continue.
Them just also wanting to by them, I mean Republican politicians and lawmakers introducing bills that just basically allow them to reach up women's skirts to determine what kind of genitals they have.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna the whole we're gonna inspect for genitalia. I mean, this is what I've heard. I mean, I haven't completely validated it, but this whole idea. I think I agree with him. I think it's crazy. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to go up there and go up people's skirts and all that shit. And considering the pedophilia issue we have in this country, you better come up with another solution to that problem, my guy.
Check it out before you come into the bathroom, right?
This right here is nonsense. And this what Matt is pointing out is a complete example of what we're talking about. Let me try to post it, because like this is like one of the examples where I'm like, here we go. Like this is what I mean. Where is it? There, basically, here it is right here. Here it is right here. Transgender girls are now blocked from playing women's sports from kindergarten through college. Okay? From kindergarten through college. I played baseball in the 5th grade with a girl. My taekwondo team had a girl in it. Okay? Like, prior to puberty, there's a bunch of intramural, co-ed, whatever, prior to puberty with girls and boys. Once puberty hits, that's when the bifurcation happens. So what happens, instead of being rational and saying, you know, boys and girl sports will be dichotomized from, 8th grade on or whatever, based on, patterns of puberty or whatever. Fine. That's logical. That's rational. Why you would have to go all the way back to kindergarten when there is no distinction relative to physical strength and things of that nature between 5-year-olds? Why would you do that? Because you're completely hateful and crazy and ignorant, and you're reacting to people like Emma. Like, this is the thing. People like Emma are in the super minority. But when people are legislating, it's almost like they're they're legislating with the craziest, most wild-eyed, crazy person you can think of. So, like, this is one of the reasons why I have such a serious problem with these issues, is because the pendulum continues to swing over and over again, and each side doesn't think through the ramifications of what they're saying and doing. We continue.
It's like, I'm sorry, but if our social like institutions, or honestly, like women's sports, it's barely an institution. It's only been around for a few decades. Like, if our sources of our outlets.
And how long has this ideology been around? Your ideology has been around for 3 minutes. Good night.
For entertainment, for competition, for like, I don't know however to define them. But if they're not able to accommodate trans people, then they're not worthy of existing. Like, it's just,
if they're not if they do not accommodate less than 1% of the population, then nobody should be able to do women's sports. Here we are again. Did you even hear Malcolm saying this? If we can't go to a white school, there should be no schools. I mean, that's a real issue of oppression. A newsflash: if you're a biological male and they won't let you on the women's team, you're not being oppressed. You're actually being treated equally. What my folks went through was actual oppression. Listen to what this is not how oppressed people talk. We're going to completely destroy the entire institution if I don't get this unfair advantage over you, which is also the destruction of your institution. So in Emma Vigeland's world, there is no way in which women's sports can continue because these biological males either should be able to go in without question, because that's what she said, no questions, full stop, in which case, if we applied that consistently, that would be the end of women's sports. Or she's saying, if you don't allow biological men to go and take over women's sports, then we should completely eradicate women's sports because they're not worthy to exist in the first place. This shit is incredible. What about women male motorsports like Indy or NASCAR? Yeah, that was kind of a controversy when Homegirl was in NASCAR, right? Because women are biologically lighter, and so that gives her a competitive advantage in NASCAR. But it was ruled that it wasn't enough of an advantage for her to Danica Patrick is her name. But she never won the Indy 500 or anything like that. Like, if Danica Patrick would have won like 3 Indy 500s or whatever, or Daytona 500s or whatever, if she won a significant amount of titles in a short period of time, then I definitely believe that argument would have garnered more weight to it. Good point out, though.
like we're talking about movie theaters? What are we talking about here? I mean, I love sports as much as anyone, but if they cannot accommodate, including trans people, I don't give a shit about them being robust.
Okay, let me put something out here for a second. Is the NBA worthy of continuing, even though people in wheelchairs are never going to be able to participate? Should we disband the NBA because people in wheelchairs are not going to be able to compete with LeBron James? Should we do that, Emma? Should we say the NBA is ableist, and if they can't find a way to accommodate all these people in wheelchairs, then the NBA should not exist for anyone? Is that rational? Or maybe it would be more rational to say, you know what? It would be cool for folks in wheelchairs to be able to compete in sports. Why don't we get everybody who is athletically inclined that's in a wheelchair and get together, and we find some way, maybe we augment rules here and there, and we find some way to have wheelchair basketball and create a wheelchair league, and hell, maybe even have a Special Olympics. That's what disabled people did. They said, oh, we can find a way to participate and have fun. But they also had a realistic understanding that there's no way in the world a dude in a wheelchair is going to be able to go on a basketball court and compete in any meaningful way against LeBron James, or me, for that matter. Forget LeBron.
It's just, be inclusive or don't be. That's it. Or don't exist. Number 30.
The authoritarianism in the left, I gotta tell you, this is another thing that just blew me away. The leftists that I came up with were just live and let live. I understand your religion. Don't force your religion on me. I've got a different ideology. No disrespect to you. You do your Christian thing over here. I'm gonna do my lecherous pagan thing over here. And we can, that was a leftism and liberalism that I came up with. This authoritarian bullshit where it's like, if you do not accommodate your league to less than 1% of the population, then all of it should go away. Holy shit. This is what I'm saying. If you are concerned about this trans stuff, you should not be concerned. There are people like Emma V running around saying shit out in public. All you got to do is hit play with these folks. There's no way that this ideology is ever going to take root in this country at a macro level. No way.
When Justice Thomas and Alito, but very specifically Thomas, expired. Oh, I already read that. Drew from Vegas. I'm reminded of the Louis C.K. bit when someone says, how am I supposed to explain gay marriage to my kid? Yeah, that's a good bit. J-Man Raps. Great show today. Why are Thursdays so goated? Anyway, tomorrow morning, Finland versus Canada World Hockey Championship. I'm sure Emma wasn't a way to rig the tournament with the recently divorced Finnish Prime Minister. I'm sure we won't be getting dumps in that regard. Left is best.
Thursdays are great because obviously the difference on Thursdays is myself and Brandon. I mean, it's just obvious.
B&B.
Yeah. Worcester Cat.
Okay, so Brandon was a random black guy's name. I just didn't understand what he was saying half the time. We could see.
So where's Dorinda? If you know, you know. Yep, if you know, you know.
All right, so Thaddeus Mason says the left didn't change from that. You're looking at these fakes and grifters as if they're actually representative of the left. I do not believe that Emma Vigeland is fake. I think she really believes the shit that she's saying. She really believes it. A lot of these, I don't think all leftists, but a lot of these leftists are authoritarians. You have to admit, Thaddeus, you have to. Some of them, a lot of them, especially in the media, are real authoritarian. The left didn't change from that. You're looking at these grifters and fakes as they're actually representative of the left. It's like letting Ben Shapiro speak for all the right. Well, I don't believe Ben Shapiro or anybody speaks for all of anything, but I do believe that Ben Shapiro gives you a pretty good understanding of right-wing thought. I don't think that people who listen to Ben Shapiro religiously are that far away from him, ideologically speaking, but I definitely see your point. I keep trying to make the points that whatever group obtains power in society will get taken over by authoritarian hypocrites who want to use it for their own interests. Yeah, I mean, and I suppose that's why we have a checks and balances system, for sure, for sure. All right, much love to all you beautiful people. Much love to Emma V. Shout out to all the trans people in the world. Listen, my view on trans folks is that they're human beings created in the image of God, crowned with glory and honor. They should be loved, respected, more than tolerated. I don't believe that the scripture calls us to love our neighbor, not tolerate our neighbor. So, no, I don't want to just tolerate trans people. I want to love them. And love from a biblical Christian framework has some parts truth to it, some parts emotion, some parts theology, etc., etc., etc. So that's where I'm at. If it sounds too complex or over nuanced, I apologize, but that's where I'm at. Much love to all you beautiful people. I will see you guys at the next show. Love your neighbor, take care of each other. Middle America, we are the